If you've listened to this podcast, then you know the Tighten Up's brought to you by Last Shot Premium Hydration, the official hydration drink of Tighten Up. Their revolutionary formula is packed with vitamin B12 and 0 grams of sugar. It helps the Titans hydrate, replenish, and recover. Try it at Callahan Hall or learn more at lastshotofficial.com.
Detroit, it's time to tighten up. Welcome to Tighten Up, the podcast, presented by The Shield NIL. Brought to you by Hyperice and Last Shot Energy. A state of the Titans, the latest in Detroit Mercy athletics, and a chance to hear from Titans all over the world. Here's your host, Dan Hasty.
It is amazing how fast this season goes by. I mean, you look now and it's literally the home stretch of this season of Detroit Mercy basketball. This has moved quickly for so many of us, and Detroit Mercy sits with a chance, an outside chance. They're still working for this, and if things fall into place, they could hypothetically host a first-round game in the Horizon League tournament. And considering everything that was last season and how hard that was, getting a first-round home postseason game, that's a big win if the Titans are able to get there. There's a lot of things that have happened that have gone in the right direction for Detroit Mercy basketball. We've got a very busy week here on Tighten Up. Welcome back in. It's another edition of Tighten Up the podcast. Glad to have you along with us. We have got a jam-packed show for you today. Anybody see the Super Bowl halftime show, by the way? Did you see Kendrick Lamar? More importantly, though, did you see the cameo from Uncle Sam himself, Samuel L. Jackson? He dropped a very interesting line that fits this show perfectly.
Do you really know how to play the game? Then tighten up!
Perfect. Tighten up. I mean, it's almost like we asked him to say it. It doesn't get much better. And at least now we have drops for Tighten Up, the podcast. So without further ado, and by the way, this is our first show this week. We'll have another one coming up later this week. We've got a handful of players still left. And unfortunately, we thought we would have a player for today's show, but unfortunately, they're out for the season and they're not going to be able to join us here today. Wait a minute. Hold on. Check
Surprise.
that. Surprise. Mak Manciel is here. And
Yes,
he's
sir.
back. What's up, man? Welcome back.
What's going on? I appreciate you for having me. I definitely appreciate it.
It's the best news that Detroit Mercy basketball got all season long, because only a couple of months ago, I remember you trying to close out on a three-point shot, and I remember that ankle turning, and I remember thinking, okay, well, this really changes the arc of the season, and you were coming into playing your best basketball, and then all of a sudden, you just have to feel like, oh, here we go again. So tell me a little bit about what that felt like for you, and we'll kind of go in order, but because you got off to that great start this year.
Yeah. So this was probably about 5 games into the season, going into Ball State, feeling good. The game prior to, I was in foul trouble, so that was probably the worst game that I've had as of the season. So it was I wasn't really feeling too much pressure or anything like that. Just going to the game regular, trying to get prepared, being with my guys, excited to try to go out there and get a dub. And unfortunately, within the first, I probably played like 5-6 minutes. And just a crazy play, ended up closing out, stepping on his foot partially, and just that angle that I stepped on, my ankle ended up popping out, and immediately I knew that there was obviously something wrong. It didn't feel like it was even, in place. I ended up looking down, seeing that it's not looking too good, and I had a little bit of panic, but I just didn't want to be causing too much commotion. I just kind of want to get out of there, see what was going on. So I look over to the bench, I call, somebody over, they come get me, and I get taken to the back. And I was in pain, but all I can remember was thinking about I might be done for the year. And that was like, that it killed me inside. Honestly, I broke down crying. And it was more so just because I knew how much effort and time I put into this year, and then something so just out of the random, out the blue. It wasn't like, something crazy. It was just kind of a closeout. Could have been avoided if I would have just stayed on my feet and listened. But things happen, and so I was really down, honestly. And then my teammates, I could see the emotion and I can see how they felt about the situation as well. And so it was kind of hard, and it was pretty sad, especially for me, because I felt that I had put so much time and effort into getting back, and I wasn't completely healthy last year. And this was the first time where I feel like I was coming into a season more prepared than, years prior. And just like that, it kind of, slipped away from me a little bit. And so from there on out, it was just kind of figuring out how I wanted to approach it, what was going to happen, what were the chances and the possibilities to happen. And it just kind of ended up working out how it is. And so, now I'm back, put a lot of work in, and, we're getting better. So it was a roller coaster of emotions, though, for sure, because I was very uncertain with, how things were going to play out, if I was going to be able to recover in time to come back. And even crazy to say, like, the doctors, I'm back way earlier than what the doctors said I would have been. And that's partially me being a little hard-headed and, going hard on things. But then also, like, I put a lot of time and effort into it. So it's not like just random, I really did kind of work for the things. I was doing treatment 2-3 times a day, every day, and just honestly keep going. And so I was just stacking days, and each day I would feel better, break some scar tissue up, do this. And, now we're here. So it was a crazy kind of couple months for sure, though. Crazy couple months.
Well, shout out to Sean Clark, the Detroit Mercy men's basketball athletic trainer. I know he has been very busy this year. And by the way, it's a brutal way to remind you to not leave your feet on a closeout. I just want to say that. I think you will be remembering that for a while. But I want to go back to last year, though, because, you come back from the ACL, and a lot of people say that it takes about a year from that torn ACL to get back to 100%. And seeing the difference between watching you play last year versus watching you play this year, I mean, it's clear to us. We can see it. But I'm curious as you're feeling it, what feels different? How did it feel last year versus how it feels this year, at least before the ankle?
Yeah. So last year I was capable, but I didn't have the athleticism that I was used to having. So I was very slow. I couldn't really push off. I couldn't plant. So I'm it's kind of like fighting a losing battle, because you want to close out, you want to get there. But if you do close out, now you're not as fast to recover. So now you're just getting blown by. And so I wasn't performing well, you know what I'm saying? And then I was also dealing with me not really having my legs underneath me, which added to the fact that every time I'm shooting the ball, my legs are a little heavy. So I'm dealing with stuff like that. And then on defense, I love playing defense, and I can't do that to the extent that I have done it prior. So it was very hard last year, just because I wasn't ready myself, but I was trying as hard as I could. And it just I didn't feel like it was catching up with me. I was putting all this work in, getting shots up, but it wouldn't translate because my legs just weren't under me for real. So moving on into this year, over the summer, I was able to, do some things to help my knees and also get my legs, my strength back, and my fast twitch muscles, and my athleticism was able to come back to where I was feeling good. I was never not able to dunk, but I was able to dunk explosively again and just, feel good while I was doing things. And it was honestly night and day, spending the whole summer kind of getting back into it. I ended up getting it's called a PRP shot, to where they basically take the blood out, spin it around in the machine, get the plasma, inject it into your knee. And then that worked magic. Honestly, it was crazy, because I was having daily knee problems prior to, just more soreness, constantly banging and everything. And because of that shot, it was after about a month of, the recovery process, I felt like I had a brand new knee for, still to this day, it's carried over. I don't have the same knee problems that I had prior to. And so that really helped out. But there was a lot that went into, the recovery process, besides just, getting in the gym, because that was never the problem. I always was in the gym, but it was more so getting my body, to the standard that it needed to be. So that was probably the biggest difference from last year compared to this year. I was able to come into this year more ready and actually healthy than last year. I was honestly probably about 70% with, my legs just not even really being there. So it was a couple more battles to fight last year than, this year. But that was kind of how everything ended up playing out.
So the PRP injections, highly recommend. That's what it sounds like.
Definitely. If you're dealing with the problems that I was dealing with my own knee, then I would 100% recommend it. And I only end up doing one shot. They recommend doing a cycle of 3. And just off the one shot alone, I felt night and day better. So, I would definitely attest to it for sure.
When you see how the early part of the season went for you, and I mean, it was pretty clear right away that you were an advanced version of yourself from last year. I mean, just watching you go to the basket, I think it was almost the first game we saw you in Detroit, said, oh, that we didn't see that last year. That's different. That's different. So then you end up with that 30-point game against Niagara, which was as good as we've seen you play. I mean, 9 for 15 from the floor, 6 of 7 from 3-point range, 30 and 8 rebounds. You play 40 minutes in an overtime game. And that was significant. Also because you remember how long it took to get a win last year. And so to be able to win, I mean, that felt really significant. And you were such a big part of that. It probably felt like a huge weight off your shoulders.
It definitely did, because going into that game with us playing Cleary first and then Loyola Chicago, it was 2 kind of different extremes. You know what I'm saying? One school is kind of, you're trying to work on things, but you go into the game not necessarily expecting a win, but you kind of understand what you're getting into. And then with Loyola Chicago, we have a lot of freshmen, and that's a bigger school. So there was a lot of nerves that went into it. But Niagara was the first school to where you can say, okay, we are both Division I programs that it's a legitimate chance for or expectations wise, it's a legitimate chance for either team to win. So we thought it was very important just to kind of come into this game, play as hard as we can. And it was a very important game leading into it. We felt that we had to win this game to kind of prove that, this is not going to be like last year. Like we have a fighting chance against really any team that we play. And if we all play together and just play hard, then anything can happen. And so with that dub being secured, that kind of released a little stress off of our shoulders, saying, okay, we know we can do this. We've seen that we can do it. Now let's just keep getting better and, keep trying to keep things going.
So because of all these extra minutes that you're playing and all these extra shots that you're taking, I keep hearing your name and having to say your name more and more on the broadcasts. And we had a conversation about this last year, and I'd like to give you the opportunity to set the record straight. How do you pronounce your last name?
So it's funny because ever since I was a kid, I've heard multiple different versions from multiple different people. Me and my family, we pronounce it Mancel, like M-A-N and then S-E-L-L, like Mancel. I've heard Manciel. I've heard Manciel. I've heard a bunch of different variations, but typically in my family, we go by Mancel. So just kind of keep it simple and easy.
And the truth shall set you free.
There we go.
All right. So here's one thing that I think a lot of people are curious about. So the Ball State game. So you hurt the ankle. Then, of course, we don't see you for a while. There's another injury. Jared Larry also gets hurt. And then we see the news that it sounds like you're going to be out for the rest of the season. And I think that was a very fair expectation. You even said it yourself. You surprised a lot of people by how fast you healed up. So take me through how everything went down. Let's take a quick break. Hyperice is a proud sponsor of Tighten Up the Podcast, the leading provider of innovative technology for recovery, mobility, and improved performance. Some of the best massage therapy guns you can find. They help the Titans and they can help you too. Find out more information online at hyperice.com.
So initially, well, first, I feel like this needs to be mentioned. That night that I dislocated my ankle, I went to the hospital through the ambulance, whatever, and they took an X-ray saying that I broke something, basically connecting my ankle to my foot that I put pressure on. And so when they told me that, they automatically told me that, okay, that makes the recovery of this a lot longer than, say, if you were to just dislocate it, or say it was just dislocation, you didn't tear anything or break anything. So hearing that, I was kind of like, okay, well, it set the bar to where I'm already kind of expecting not to come back, just because I know that I might have to have surgery, I might have to do something, and that's a whole different process than just a regular dislocation. Anyway, so we go through that X-ray. They told me I broke something. 2 days later, the team ends up leaving. They have an away trip, but I had to stay back. I had another X-ray. And so through those 2 days, I received lots of well wishes, lots of people saying they were praying for me. I was praying a lot myself. And I ended up getting another X-ray, and they told me that it looks like a regular ankle, just a bad ankle sprain, basically. So from that little change right there was an immediate, there's a chance. Like, there's a possibility that I can figure something out and end up coming back. And so through talking to the doctor, I saw the doctor at the hospital and the doctor that comes to Detroit Mercy. And they were both telling me time frames about 3-ish months. And immediately I'm telling my parents, I'm telling the doctors, I'm trying to come back January 1st. That was my initial goal, which was extremely optimistic, a little delusional, if I admit myself, but it was a goal that I had set. And so from there on out, I told Sean, look, this is what we're going to do. As soon as we get this MRI, I'm going hard. Whatever, give me as much as I can. I'm going to do it as much as I can. I'm going to run. I'm going to do everything that you can give for me to do. I'll do it as hard as I can, as many times as I can a day, based on how my ankle feels. And as soon as we kind of found out that there's a possibility that I would be able to make it back for some games, it was full go. And so every day I'm coming in there early, go to class, go to practice. During practice, I'll go do therapy again. I'll get on the treadmill for a little bit, run a couple miles. And it was just a progressive, constantly stacking days. And at first, because of me possibly being able to get a medical red shirt and me get my year of backup eligibility, it was kind of debating if I should even come back and just be able to come back next year and have a full season, or if I should try to fight through this and be able to play with this team this year. And the team that we have this year played a very big role in me fighting so hard to come back, because honestly, this is one of my favorite teams I've ever been on. As far as just, yeah, we have a lot of freshmen and they're very hard-headed sometimes, but I love all of them. They're all my guys. They listen, they play hard. And that's something that you can't find everywhere. At the end of the day, I know that the freshmen we have this year are going to play hard. They're going to compete, and everything else that goes along, that's my job to help talk them through it, help them prepare them for what they have not experienced yet. And so besides from them, we have Orlando, Legend, Jay Larry, E-Man, all these vets that I've known prior to. And then, of course, with E-Man, I played with him last year, so he's one of the guys returning with me. Is just, it really feels like a family. It feels like a bunch of guys that have known each other for many years prior to, and we just somehow, some way all ended up on the same team. And so because of that, it made me want to push even harder to know that I know my guys miss me and I miss my guys. So I'm going to try my hardest to get back on this floor, because I know the impact that I can have for them, but also just to help, bring this team together more and more. Because when I went down, it was a big piece of, I would say, leadership that kind of, or a voice more so, that just kind of wasn't there. And it's really hard for me to do the same things on the sideline that I could do on the court, because yeah, you see things differently and you act differently, but it's you almost, when you're hurt, you feel so disassociated from, the situation going on. You don't really feel like you're really involved as much as obviously you playing. But it was a pretty big mental battle, and I prayed about it a lot. But I decided that I can do this, I can come back, and my ankle was thankfully working with me. I didn't have too many days to where I was saying I couldn't do something because of how sore it was or anything like that. It was kind of just suck it up, keep going, contrast, nothing a little ice can't help, and, keep it going. So it was a lot that went into it, but, because of my guys and just God helping me have faith and everything like that, it was, I was able to kind of get it done. So it was a very exciting time though, because there was a lot of thought going into it, but a lot of time and effort going into it as well. So it was it was an experience.
It's easy to forget that
Mhm.
the game that you got hurt, Titans won that game to go to 3-2. So they were over 500, which I don't think had happened in the non-conference portion of the season in years. So you guys were off to a real start. And to get you back, I mean, look, for you to be motivated enough to work that hard to come back, there has to be a situation worth working hard to get back to. And you kind of spoke to some of the freshmen and some of the guys who are leaders on this team, but you fill such an important role for this team because, and we saw what it looked like without you being there, the ability to knock down shots, especially from deep. That was just something that the Titans didn't have without you being there. So I'm sure it was probably just grinding you having to sit there and watch all of that.
Mm-hmm. It was hard for sure because I know what we could do and I know what I also could bring to it. And it was hard to kind of coach guys up and explain certain things because I can't necessarily show you what I mean. I can tell you and try my best to really explain it, but it was hard to kind of have a camaraderie between everybody because we had so much going on. And mind you, I'm hurt. Jay Larry gets hurt not too long after, and then Steve-O's dealing with some back problems, and then Miles rolls an ankle, and Lando rolls his ankle. So it was just constant battling, figuring out who's going to be able to practice today, who's going to be able to do this, do that. And so, honestly, I got to give a lot of praise to not only our coaches, but my team we've had a lot of resilience this year. There's not a lot of things that behind the scenes, but there's been a lot of injuries and a lot of guys fighting through some things to where nobody really knows this. So, it's kind of just the unseen things that I have to give respect to my guys and our coaches for having not only the trust, but the patience, for the team that we've had this year. And so, I definitely got to give a shout out to them guys because they've been fighting just like me. So, it's not, it was more so everybody kind of coming together and just constantly, we got to keep stacking days and just keep things going.
You know what I really like about this team? It feels like they don't try to be something they're not. They really do have an identity and that, defense, rebounding, getting high percentage shots, riding the hot hand. For example, even though there's not a whole lot of guys who shoot threes that much, you guys are right there in the middle of the pack in the Horizon League in 3-point percentage. Now, that's percentage. The thing that I like, though, is that they really don't shoot very many threes. And I think you being out of the lineup had a lot to do with that. I think if you were around, I think you'd see a very different number there. But the thing I like on top of that is that you guys hold your opponents to the worst 3-point field goal percentage in the entire conference. And I am sure that you guys know that, and I'm sure that's something that you guys take pride in.
Definitely. That's our defense is definitely a big part of our identity because at the end of the day, of course, if shots aren't falling, you have to have something else to fall back on because it's possible to win games off of just having great defense because some shots fall, some shots don't fall. That's basketball. But at the end of the day, if you can say that you worked hard and you were able to hold the other team, it makes your offense honestly easier because then you get more transition. They're tiring themselves out on offense. So when we get on offense, they'll be tired on when they're playing defense. And so Coach Monty has done a great job of teaching us, what he wants from us with, being in the gaps or how many people he wants to go crash this game or who has to get back. And so the preparation is there. And honestly, it goes with our effort as well. We know that we have to play hard because there aren't a lot of teams that can get 5 players to play hard on the court. And so if we can get 5 guys playing hard, it's almost, it's hard to beat that. Regardless if shots are falling or not, it's hard to beat 5 guys playing with each other, playing for each other. If someone gets beat, you got a guy right there for help, and then another guy's going out to the other man. And so it causes a lot of commotion, and when it's a lot going on like that, it's just hard to get your team going. But when we can stay solid in our defense, it really helps us out because as you can see, with me not being there, we didn't have as many guys that were able to score. And so that puts certain people in positions that may have not been in a position prior to. And because of our defense, it gives us a chance every game. We know every game that if we play our defense, we will have a chance to win this game. And that our defense is that's mainly effort. You're taught the simple things, staying on your feet on closeouts, making sure you're in the gap, things of that sort. And if you just do that, plus the effort, that's a pathway to somewhat success. So just kind of listening to what our coaches are telling us and keeping the energy high every day. Those are some big things that we've had to focus on because, like you said, if you're not shooting a lot or shots ain't falling, you got to find something else to lift you up a little bit. So we've used our defense for that.
That does it for part one of our two-part conversation with Mak Manciel. Coming up tomorrow, the conclusion of our conversation with the Titan sharpshooter. In part two, we talk Mark Montgomery and why Mak decided to stay at Detroit Mercy despite the head coaching change last season. We also find out that Mak was coached by a current Titans player's father back when he was young. We'll find out who that is coming up in part two. And that comes your way tomorrow. And until then, I'll talk to you Titans of Industry next time.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Tighten Up, the podcast. Join our community at The Shield on theshieldnil.org and follow us on X and Instagram at theshieldnil.
If I can tell you one thing above all else as part of this show, it would be this. If you're unfamiliar, if you haven't done it before, join the community at The Shield Online. It's online at theshieldnil.org. That's theshieldnil.org.